Welcome to Pulp Boredom, the search for lost literature. New year, new books. Well, old books. I'm not going to start reading new books. But before we dive right in, a little bit about the author. Harris Moore is a joint pseudonym for authors Arthur Moore and Alfred Harris. Alf Harris was born in 1928 and he died in 1998 at the age of 70. I'm scraping the internet floor for information on these two fellas, and there isn't much. Harris was a Canadian crime author and screenwriter and has worked on Space Command, The Bionic Woman, Dragnet.
Come on, I'll help you out.
Adam 12, Bonanza, Wild Wild West, and Mission Impossible. But I can't find anything on Arthur Moore. Nationality, written works, even his birth and death dates. I found dates for him, but they were unconfirmed and suspect. This guy was a ghost. All I can say for certain is that together, these two wrote The Marrow Eaters, a horror novel, and one lone science fiction. Which brings us to Slater's planet. 5 years away from Earth, a spaceship's crew grows restless and rebellious. Bitterness and frustrations make the additional emotional payload on the Arcturus and Arcturus on the Arcturus and increase the burdens of Captain Banyan. When a strange, bright object suddenly glows on the view screen, hopes kindle. But the beckoning planet raises more questions than answers, and the crew and ship are drawn into a greater danger than they have ever faced before. Slater's Planet was an original story, first published by Pinnacle Books in 1971. It is 188 pages and originally cost 95 cents. I own the first edition. No cover artist is listed, but honestly, who would want to claim this double exposure abomination? And what is this garish orange smear above this guy's head supposed to be? My copy has an old cooked-on sticker, but I don't even care. It sucks. The German edition's cover is the best, but, ich spreche kein Deutsch. I know I said that wrong. I don't speak German! There aren't too many copies of this out there on the net, but you can probably find it for under $10 if you're so inclined. Alright, let's talk about what I liked. The premise is great. This is the not Enterprise at the end of its 5-year mission, written a few years after Star Trek had aired, and the influence is obvious. But instead of finding a fun, exciting alien world every episode, they found the universe to be completely empty. Years ago, I wrote a third of a book. I never finished it, but I wrote a third of a book called Barren Universe that operates under this exact same premise. The difference with my book is it was a science fiction horror, as the crew was starting to lose their minds and go mad, and there were murders involved. It was really cool. I probably should finish it maybe one of these days.
Don't give me hope.
But in this version, nobody's going crazy. It's not horror, but the crew is slowly becoming mutinous. And when we enter into the story here, it seems like they're just on their last thread. Captain Banyan knows that this planet, spotted by Lieutenant Slater, is their last hope. It is the last hope of keeping some semblance of order on this ship. If this turns out to be devoid of life as well, the crew would turn on him. Dubbed Slater's Planet by the crew, the entire world is covered in water with the exception of one small island. The Arcturus lands and the scientists disembark. They search the island, they run their tests, they find it, much to their chagrin, to be completely empty.
I just love scanning for life forms. Life forms. You tiny little life forms. You precious little life forms. Where are you?
Without a single trace of life found, the crew is called back to the ship to leave. However, a young woman, Yeoman Howard, has gone missing. Now, there's no mystery for the reader because the front cover informs us that the planet is controlled by 2 computers. It isn't a mystery in the story either because we have already been introduced to these computers, Alpha and Beta, at this point. What we don't know is why the computers are acting the way they are. The ship is then disabled, and the crew is stuck there with this truly alien computer intelligence. As they try to communicate to figure out what these computers want, They are faced with an even greater threat. A massive comet is on a collision course with Slater's planet, and time is running out. Now, I read this at the end of December, and I had started 2 books, and I kind of wanted to see which one I wanted to finish, so I kind of dipped my toes into both books. The other was Danger Planet, which is a swashbuckling space adventure featuring Captain Future. I thought for sure it would be this one, and the story here easily pushed old Cap back into the stack. The titular character, Lieutenant Gary Slater, is not the main character. He's not our protagonist. However, he is the most interesting character. Flawed, sleazy, conniving, this character is multi-layered and quite complex. I won't spoil his arc here, but suffice it to say, I wanted more of Slater, especially at the latter half. Slater's planet is actually a chassis for these 2 supercomputers. Okay. Anyways, the computer named Alpha is needed to focus on its Prime Directive. Here is another Star Trek reference borrowed. But we aren't told what the Prime Directive is.
The Prime Directive is not just a set of rules. It is a philosophy, and a very correct one.
But we do know that's important. And because of this importance, Alpha created Beta, this other AI computer, and put it in charge of basically the maintenance of Slater's planet, of running the world. Beta's programming is not the Prime Directive to uphold that, but rather to ensure survival of the 2 artificial intelligences at all costs. Now, when that goal and aim clashes with the Prime Directive, these 2 alien AIs end up in a symbiotic battle with the crew of the Arcturus in the middle. I actually love this element. The 3rd act turns into SF action, and it was fun as heck. The crew must delve deep into the depths of Slater's world to take on these 2 computers. The battle inside the planet was interesting, exciting, and perfectly ramped up the tension and stakes up until the very end. I had wanted to start the year with my blood pumping and me flipping pages, and this did the trick. And now, the bad. There's too many characters. There's not too many characters. There's too many names. A vast majority of the names you read on the page aren't actually characters. They're just someone who pops in for a scene, does something, and then is out. Now, initially I'm taking notes, but then I realized I'm never going to see most of these characters again, and I kind of abandoned that. I gave it up. Most of the people on this ship are given names when they should have been given just their title or their function. Like, we don't need to know the names of the 2 security guards who just happen to walk by the corridor. You won't have any trouble recognizing and sticking with the characters once it gets going, but just be aware that you're going to read a couple dozen names, and just don't let it take up any hard drive space up here. Harrison Moore, these 2 writers, they're not sci-fi guys. This was written in 1971, but it reads like it should have been written in the 40s. Or 30s, or 20s. Soft science doesn't even begin to cover it. This is squishy science. This is pudding science. This is jiggly-cake science. It feels weird in here now. Slater's End. Again, no spoilers here, but I feel like there was a scene missing from Slater's perspective at the end of the book. It would have added so much. It would have tied things in a very neat bow thematically, but what baffles me is how obvious it is. You guys, it's really, really obvious. Like, this is missing from this book. So I was kind of baffled, like, how could one writer miss this, let alone 2 guys miss this? Anyway, it doesn't make any sense. If you've read this, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. I mean, it's that obvious we don't even need to discuss it.
Well, obviously.
Let's leave that negativity behind. Is 2025 looking fun? As I mentioned earlier, the science here is, it's not even close. Here's the best example. Slater spots the planet because it is unusually bright for a planet. Only once they land do they finally see the sun that the planet orbits around. Now, it's time to put on our Hal Clement hats here for a moment, because planets don't really produce light. They just reflect light. Like, where was the sun hiding so that they couldn't see it until after they had landed on the planet? But this makes sense for someone who understands nothing about astronomy.
What are you saying? Just look in the sky. The sun is so little. Stars are so little and small. Space is really big. It's easy to miss.
I am confident in saying that the extent of Harris and Moore's knowledge of the universe is limited to what they watched on Star Trek. In fact, if they were alive during the 17th century, I'd be willing to bet they'd take umbrage with some wild ideas from a man named Galileo. Computers are smart, right? Yeah, they're so smart they can teach themselves telepathy. And finally, the Prime Directive, which is revealed at the very end. No spoilers, but it's hilarious. It's goofy. You could probably guess it as the story's going along, but it's... the idea is fine, but it's the goofiest execution of that idea. I'm telling you, it is silly, laugh out loud funny. But despite that ending, it is still satisfying. So what's the verdict? eBook. This pulpy popcorn read is a solid 3 out of 5. It's not changing the world or worth seeking out, but if you happen to find it for a couple bucks and are in the mood to give your brain a break, then I can guarantee an afternoon of fun. And that is my review of Slater's Planet. No great literary discovery today, but I mean, there are far worse ways to start the year. As always, thanks for watching. I'll see you all next time with the Robot Brains.